Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 414, recorded live on Saturday, January 16th. I'm your host, Patrick. This week's screenshot is a nice little fun one. It's Zorina takes a selfie in giant hole in the 254th screenshot of the week. It came from one of our guests, Propane. Nice little shot of a dragon there. It's always fun to get a dragon shot in this game. We talk about Dungeons and Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums from our website at DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by CyberAirs, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next Sunday, January 24th. You can stay updated by following us on social media pages or our website, DDOcast.com. Just a hint that I'm still working on getting the details out, but that might be a really awesome episode. Just saying. On the podcast this week, we've got some game news, a whole bunch of community news. We got the producer's letter that came out this very late this week. But we're also going to debate Gnomes. We know Gnomes are coming.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yay!
Whoa. With me this week, we'll introduce our guest. He's the co-host of DDO Players News. He has a pen and paper background, but refuses to name a certain edition, and he still doesn't get the hype around Gnomes. It's Draculetta.
I do not. Don't get it. Don't understand it, but whatever. Thanks for having me
counterpoint.
back. That's right. I'll save it for later.
She's a constant DDO Community World guest and hosts her own Twitch shows, Shroudapalooza and Ladies Night on Argonesson. It's BonnieBew.
Hello.
Welcome back. We've also got, returning to the show, he's a builder of builds. He's got over 50 characters to choose from when he plays, although he doesn't play them all at the same time. It's FailedLegend.
Just to say, the edition doesn't matter, it's the people you're with.
That's a fair point. Although some editions are still better than others.
Yeah, exactly. Fourth is the best.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Don't start that. Don't start. We're not here to debate
dear.
that.
Oh, dear.
Be quiet.
That's
I
not what we're
blanked
here
it
to
out.
debate.
Save that for a different show, right?
Yeah.
All right.
So, debate rules. Each guest will be given an opportunity to give an opening argument in a rotating order. An argument should be creative, passionate, amusing, and factual, but they should not be mean. Counterpoints are encouraged, and interruptions are allowed at my discretion. If all guests choose to debate the same point, which might happen, we might choose a troll and just make it more interesting.
We get to shout objection.
No.
Objection! No? Okay.
But you can chime in and counterpoint.
That's less fun.
I'm fairly lenient when it comes to interruptions, as long as the point still gets across. Points will be arbitrarily awarded at my discretion. They have absolutely no meaning, and the winner at the end will get absolutely nothing.
Except awesome.
Probably not even that.
Oh.
Don't even get bragging rights, really.
No, you really. Well, you kind of do.
But you get
depends.
gnomes.
Everyone's gonna get gnomes, yes.
Yes.
And just as a reminder of how completely arbitrary they are, I disqualified 2 people in the past.
Yes.
Very
I
arbitrarily.
remember that.
You
Tell Pine
profaned
Leaf
you
one.
profaned the name of Gary Gygax.
That is worth a disqualification then.
I
We
thought
got
so, yeah.
disqualified. We just said that he wasn't our favorite dungeon master voice in game.
Yeah, sure.
Perkins is my god.
So anyways, our first, we'll get
Amen.
started here. The first question is, what is the most exciting thing about adding gnomes to the game? We're going to start with Draculetta.
Well, as you mentioned in the intro, yes, why are you starting with me, G? No, as you mentioned in the
Random
intro, for me, I do have a pen and paper black background, so I will have to say that the gnome is pretty iconic in pen and paper as it was introduced in the original Player's Handbook all the way back in 1978. So they're, classic to pen and paper, and it's good to see Turbine adding more of the classic pen and paper feel to DDO. But the most important thing about why it's exciting that gnomes are coming to the game is this gets us one step closer to the tiefling.
Bonnie?
You and your tieflings. The most exciting thing about adding gnomes to their game is probably their noses. But seriously, I always gnomes are probably the only thing that I love more than Eretricos. And I've always stated that a great deal of my love for gnomes comes from the classic game series Baldur's Gate. And the Gnomes are that series like TX and Quail and the Jansen family kind of shaped my ideas of the potential of gnome characters. And that was a second edition game, and I fell in love with them. So when I first started playing Dungeons & Dragons online, I wanted my first character to be a gnome, and they didn't exist. So a small part of me always felt like I was kind of settling at the outset of this game as a player. So the arrival of gnomes after all of these years gives me this sense of completion. Like, this is what I was looking for when I first started playing DDO in 2009. So I am just, they're coming home, baby. They're coming home.
Failed Legend.
Well, first off, having another small-sized race is definitely a bonus. I have a soft spot for small-sized races, goblins, kobolds. I want all of them. So having another one that isn't just halfling is nice, but gnomes themselves have always had a special place in my heart with their weird OCD-like tendencies, getting obsessed with things, and various other odd behaviors. I'm sure we all can relate to them, being, geeks ourselves.
Duke it out, guys.
I don't think this is really a duking, other than telling.
Expound on your arguments.
Duking.
Expound on your arguments. Why
All
are
right,
we, or
Jackie.
maybe are we not excited for adding gnomes to the
Jackie.
game?
Start, Jackie.
What? I'm not. Who cares? I mean, they're little. They're halflings basically. They're just one step above a kobold? Let's be serious.
Hey,
No!
Hey. If there's another one coming after tieflings, it's kobolds. They are like the DDO.
Oh, I would vote for kobolds over tieflings, really.
Oh.
Kind of.
Oh, yeah.
See, I would vote for
Goblins.
kobolds over gnomes, but I don't understand. Seriously, why are you so hyped about a gnome? They're nothing but a glorified halfling.
It's super weird that because my arguments and my feelings about gnomes are very kind of tied into characters as opposed to the technical like character sheet of min-max playing an MMO game or that kind of thing, which is kind of weird because I think a lot of my gameplay has been skewed towards how can I use this thing and what does it fill and what's best for this role when you're playing the game and running through dungeons and stuff like that. And then when I look at gnomes, I'm thinking about characters. I'm thinking about how I feel about them. I'm thinking about the silliness and a lightheartedness and a sense of family and things like that. And they're all feelings that appeal to me and make me happy that I associate with the race of gnomes. So it's a very emotional and sentimental argument that I have about gnomes that I don't have about pretty much anything else in terms of the technical side of D&D, the D&D worlds and rules and all that kind of stuff. My heart is gnome, and so I just have this great feels to see them in game, and especially with that version that shall not be named that kind of like obliterated them and they had to like come back as a player race and it did them kind of thing. It really kind of shook me because I come from that like following the first edition and seeing them as a core player race. And I think of them as a fundamental part of Dungeons and Dragons. And in later versions, kind of moved away from that. And to see them being brought back into the world of Dungeons and Dragons just makes me happy.
Yeah, I have to agree with Bonnie on the version that shall not be named. They really did give a hardcore slap to the face to gnomes, as well as Aasimar.
It was painful.
Asimar got renamed
painful.
as Divas. Ugh, Divas were weird. Ugh.
Well, they were kind of called divas in second edition, at least in some places.
Yeah,
But yeah, love.
Yeah, there was a lot of weird stuff with the lore of that edition.
There is weird stuff.
I think mechanically they did a lot of cool things, but the lore was just wrecked. As far as gnomes, they really just suit my role playing style. I tend to be a little bit manic and crazy and stuff, so it suits the gnomes. And no, like yes, they are both small size races, but that's like saying humans and elves are the same. They have entirely different things to them. The size isn't what makes a race. Like
I think
because
Turbine's like marketing slogan here should be "size doesn't matter."
the thing is, that's like saying kobolds and dragonborn are the same. Like, well, the only difference between them is their size. But no, there's a lot of stuff that's different about them, like their lore, their background. Honestly, I was a little surprised to learn way back when that Cannith was a human house, not gnomes. Before I looked into it, I just assumed it was gnomes. Because they've always been like the weird, like the inventors, the crazy mad scientist, like that makes things like, artificer dogs and stuff. So it's like, wait, it's human?
Yeah, because in my head, House Cannith kind of seemed like a different version of maybe Luskin or something like that, and so I was a little bit surprised there too. But then we didn't have gnomes when we had House Cannith introduced or anything like that.
All right, so I'm going to make my decision here. So we move on to the next questions. And Bonnie, you had it because you were the closest person to say it without saying role playing, and then FailedLegend came in and said role playing and took it away from you. So FailedLegend gets the point.
Yeah,
I was avoiding the word role playing on purpose. Jeez, because I was trying to like appeal to more players without actually saying that word. Because sometimes you say role playing and people are like, well, I don't want to role play in a game and in an MMO. I just want to play.
Your argument was basically role playing things,
but
which is great.
It's weird because it's not something that I mean, I don't necessarily think that's not my first priority necessarily when I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons online. So it's weird for that to be my argument.
Can I sacrifice half? Can I sacrifice half my points to Bonnie? Because I think we did that.
They're arbitrary.
Damn it!
All right, next question. What is the most important thing to get right with gnomes? And we're going to start with Bonnie.
Their noses. No, I was serious this time. It's very important that they have cool noses. They have, because that to me is the most distinct thing about a gnome and their body type. And seeing the prototype thing, I'm pretty happy. I think they could be a little bit shorter, but I like I think they've captured the body type for the most part. I'm just waiting to see the whole path of noses. And then, and a little more serious thing, their racial tree is always the fundamental thing. There's got to be stuff about the racial tree that is different. And I'm assuming that there might be more answering the next question, but there's going to be things I expect involving illusion and maybe spell-like abilities that, things like perhaps invisibility that are built into the racial tree or something like that kind of fits the idea of gnomes and maybe the gnomes of Zalargo and some of the lore of Eberron. And so that's a really important part because that's what's going to get people to play them versus some other race. But noses, in terms of visuals, I want their noses to be awesome.
Okay, FailedLegend.
Sorry. Well, gnomes, like, I could have the lore a little bit wrong because I'm not 100% familiar with them in Eberron specifically. But to me, personally, so hopefully maybe it'll match up, maybe it won't, gnomes are scribes, inventors, and lovers of magic. Especially if they can somehow cram all three of them together and make that work. It makes them glee. It's their thing that makes them super happy. But they also tend to become a little bit obsessive. So to get gnomes right, I'm not going to get into what they should look like because we'd be here for 3 hours. So we'll skip that, and we're going to go pure mechanical. Intelligence bonus, and their racial stuff should focus on technological stuff, as well as various illusion magics, as Bonnie said. Because both of them have always been very synonymous with the gnome, is technology and magic and fusing the two, which is why, Eberron just screams gnomes to me, to be honest. Like, Eberron is the gnome world, come alive.
Drac?
It's the beard. It's all about the beard. If that's the only thing that I think of when I hear gnome is I think of their iconic beards that the gnome has.
They give beards to the female gnomes, do you think?
Okay. Slightly wrong there, my friend. Mustaches. Beards are a dwarf thing. Gnomes have glorious mustaches.
It's the nose.
Especially those big handlebars.
It's the nose.
Oh, yeah, and the nose. Well, yes, it's a combination of the nose growing into the awesome mustache.
I always
Beards
thought
are...
like their glorious tuberous noses were what distinguished them amongst gnomes. A gnome
Oh, yeah.
amongst gnomes.
The mustache is just an extension of your glorious nose, yes.
Do you want to
Beards-
keep going, Drac?
No, I have no answer to that. I got nothing to that.
It would be better if they had horns and they were taller and they had a tail. I'm thinking
Yeah,
of
exactly.
what Drac is
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have anything they want to add before we move on to the next one?
I'm calling my grams.
All right, then. I'm gonna say that while I do appreciate the cosmetic desires to get things right, I think FailedLegend hit the nail on the head with really kind of talking about the tech and the magic and what gnomes can kind of bring to everyone in Forgotten Realms. So FailedLegend's in the lead with 2 points.
Yay!
That mean absolutely nothing.
Yay!
Congratulations.
And we're going to move on to our next question, which is, what niche should gnomes fill? And we'll start with FailedLegend.
Well, unfortunately, I think we kind of already covered this based on what we said about gnomes. It's fairly obvious. Illusionists, wizards, and artificers are the closest thing we've got to tech and magic, especially artificers because they mix the two.
Drac?
Yeah, they should definitely be an int-based caster type, because that is exactly what they are in pen and paper. So I'm going to go with that.
Bonnie?
Well, I mean, when I hear the question talking about filling a niche, I'm thinking about what exists in the game already, what doesn't exist in the game already, and what role could it fill out of what doesn't already exist. And I have to admit that I don't think gnomes fill any gaping hole in what doesn't already exist in the game.
So then why
the
do we
main thing
need
I've heard, because they're awesome, because they're noses, and because I love them so much, even more than Eritricos. But
I can give you a mechanical reason.
the number one niche that I hear like people asking for is a race that is +2 wisdom, and gnomes are not that. They're totally not that. What they fill are things that already exist in games. You know, I do think that they're going to be a +2 intelligence. I think they're going to be a - to wisdom, and I think they're going to be a substitute for playing Drow in some builds. For give people another option for doing the kind of builds that they already are using Drow for. They're something that I associate with being illusionists, being arcane casters, they can be artificers, and they could even be rogues. But I don't think they're going to fill a gaping hole that already exists in the game necessarily.
Well, to be fair, if they do end up with intelligence, they're going to be the only 32-point enabled intelligence casters.
But like Drow are 32-point, aren't they?
No, they're 28
Sort
with
of.
weird bonuses.
If you add the bonuses together, they sort of become a 32-point build, but
Yeah.
not really.
I found like two builds.
Because you're told where the other points are spent in.
Right. You're told where your first 4 points get spent in.
Okay.
But it substitutes with a little bit of flexibility because you can get the highest possible maximum starting out of 3 different stats.
Is it even possible to get
And-
220s?
No, you can't, but you have the choice of which, like, you could do that with any one of 3 stats.
Yeah, I would have rather
or
they be
2
32-point and a variable.
Yeah,
and like elves get like straight but they can get straight pluses to DCs and spell resistance, I think. And I don't
Yeah.
see I don't see gnomes getting a straight across the board addition. I think they're going to get maybe enchantment or illusion, but not necessarily all the schools.
So
It's
let
gotta
me
be
ask you
illusion.
this. I want to ask this question
So,
because
I think
Bonnie.
it's going to be what they're playing.
Well-
You know, what kind of
So Bonnie, you're
what
saying
kind of character
they're
you're
not
playing.
really going to fill a gaping hole, but do
not
we
on
have
not mechanically on paper?
right?
No,
but you're
I don't
so
think they
that's
are.
what you're saying. And FailedLegend and Draculetta are both saying illusionists. Do we have illusionists in the game?
Well, we don't have illusionists in the game beyond casting invisibility, I think. I think illusion is an underused school, or underused in terms of opportunity amongst the spell schools that are implemented in the game.
And that's what the
It's pretty
gnome will
much,
fill.
but they have to add in new spells or abilities that somehow have a mechanic that is applicable and useful in the game, and that remains to be seen.
Based on DDO's history with introducing new things, they always come with new spells. When we got the savants, we got a bunch of new elemental spells. So the assumption,
That was,
a safe assumption would be that gnome is going to come with a bunch of new illusion spells.
but it would have to be a racial SLA kind of spell. So I think there's limits to just like the whole big range of what's available necessarily. Are you saying that you think there's going to be new spells just in general added to all arcanes?
Yeah, in the illusion tree. And then
But that's not a gnome specific thing.
It's not.
That
but
becomes
gnome,
something available to everybody.
Yes, but gnomes would be better at it because they're obviously going to have illusion, like extra better stuff with illusion. So we'll probably end up with stuff like the Bigby's line and whatnot, or something.
That
similar
would be
to that.
cool.
Yeah.
If we get that, that would be super awesome.
What if gnomes got shadow magic? Where do you know what I'm talking about?
Well,
What do you mean by shadow magic? I'm not exactly sure what you're...
It clones evocation and conjuration magic, but there's a percentage chance that the enemy would disbelieve it, and only gnomes could do that. But it would use their illusion DC.
Interesting theory.
well, I mean, that is a thing. I mean, Eberron, the gnome race is supposed to be proficient in kind of personality based, the charisma based, some of the things like, I think, diplomacy and bluff and that kind of stuff. So maybe they have an advantage there somehow, in terms of what skills that they're proficient in or they have bonuses in. I don't know.
I was just saying, because you were saying they should have SLAs, so why don't they have illusion
It's the tricky. That's the tricky thing, though, because that's really like super new content beyond just the character race. So, and that's the stuff that Turbine's kept kind of, I think, under, close to their chest so far.
Mhm.
At least as far as I know. Maybe I haven't kept on the forums, isn't it? So, I'm curious how much they're going to add in terms of things like that. Are they going to go as whole hog as they did with like half elves with the whole dilettante kind of line of having various different abilities and flexibility that you can do with the race? Or is it going to be something more straightforward like half orcs?
Well, to get it right, they would have to go whole hog on it, as you said, because if not, I think people are going to be like having pitchforks at their door if they don't.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you can't just bring in an iconic race such as the gnome and say, here, basically, it's just like a halfling with a...
Basically, there's not a lot to them as a race.
Yeah, they're going to have to give them new spells, new trees. I mean, it's going to have to be everything, kind of like they did with the warlock.
We should have talked about this what needs to be done right question. Because this is more like the most important thing to get right with gnomes.
That's why I'm letting you go for it.
But
so I definitely say, in short, new illusion spells for everyone, but make it unique for the gnomes. And I really do think the shadow casting side of things would be unique to gnomes for them to have, like, illusion versions of a couple spells as SLAs, maybe in their racial tree.
Drac, do you want to do a quick closing statement here?
Well, yeah, if you're going to do something like that, they should have to add in, like in 3rd edition, there is a subrace called the rock gnome, and the rock gnome can actually talk to animals that are buried under the ground. So they're going to have to do something like that, too, if they're going to add illusion, because that's part of gnome and pen and paper.
I don't get what the rock gnome has to do with illusion. That's just all gnomes.
Bonnie, do you want to do it? Wait, FailedLegend did one, I think. So Bonnie, a closing statement? I think I got that right.
I mean,
Yeah.
here again, it's like the niche, to have them fill a really big niche, something that's super exciting that matches with gnomes, does require a certain amount of new content. I think that's what we're getting at here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of new things implemented, And
exactly.
it's like, yes, we would like, and we're crying for new content, I think is what it is. We want new ways to play a character, and we want gnomes to be the harbinger, the vessel that brings these new things to the game. And and
And with that, I think you get the point. I think what you just said there, I think succinctly says why people are really excited about a new race is because you want new content or new ways to play your builds.
New ways to play.
And gnomes are that vessel. Well done. I was actually thinking during that we're talking about like spell-like abilities for gnomes. What would it look like if gnomes got like a spell-like ability like 5 times a day they could drop a Big B hand around.
That would be super cool.
Or one of those pointer things.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, the Big B hands.
I can't remember the name of the thing. It's not simulacrum, but it's like you get like the duplicate copies of yourself, like on either side, kind of
image.
like a shimmery. Yeah, like mirror image. I should have remembered that one, but
It could be a fun
nothing
spell
say
to add,
mirror
actually.
image.
Yeah.
You know,
A
that,
new mischance based on mirror image.
and I'm like, that would be cool. And then at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh my god, that's probably gonna be a lag monster. That's probably gonna be a bringer of lag. But I'd still want it.
Hopefully the gnomes will the niche that gnomes will fill is they'll come in and they'll tinker around on the servers and the lag will just kind of start to dissipate as the gnomes just kind of work on things.
Yeah,
That
the
makes
more
me even
gnomes we
more
have-
excited for gnomes.
The more gnomes we make, the less lag there will be, guys. We got to get together on this.
Maybe. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to the next question, which is, what should the iconic version of gnomes be? And we're going to start with Draculetta.
There's only one choice, and that is going to be an int-based deep gnome wizard based in the Forgotten Realms.
Yes.
Bonnie?
Well, we've already been told they're going to be deep gnomes. I thought we were told that in like the producer's letter and before. But so I'm like, yeah, they're going to be Svirfneblin, and I agree they're going to be the thing is they aren't happy, mischievous tinkering gnomes as much. They're hardier. You know, I think they can hide better and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I still think they're going to be an archon. They're still going to be an arcane illusionist. I agree with Drac there. But, you know, at the same time, they would have made decent fighters and rogues, and they might be different with their ability scores, maybe even. The iconic, I could see them maybe having more constitution than the non-iconic version of gnomes. So I could see stuff like that. And that's about all I got.
FailedLegend.
Well, I've pretty much already told you what I think gnomes should be. So if we're talking iconic, not a different version than what we might start with. If we're talking iconic gnomes, it's going to be the gnomes that are the best at mixing might and magic between tech, magic, and overcoming their small size to show all those biggins what it's about. And that's going to be Tinker Gnomes. Because Tinker Gnomes, they be crazy, but they be smart as heck. So, like, honestly, in my opinion, I'm sorry, guys, Deep Gnomes are just lesser dwarves. We've already got dwarves. We don't need Deep Gnomes. Deep Gnomes are just kind of slightly smaller dwarves, because unlike halflings and gnomes who have entirely different things about them, they're both just underground creatures that are hardy and mine and stuff like that. They are way too similar. So if we're going to go for something different and we're going to make it iconic, it's going to be Tinker. I know they're, technically not from Forgotten Realms, but the fun part about Eberron is Eberron and Stormreach itself is literally a melting pot. Everything shows up there. So there's really you have to legitimize it somehow. But seriously, we have a giant portal to Forgotten Realms, which is technically not possible. So having someone slip in from Dragonlance, not that hard.
Everything's possible. I remembered something else. Part of my argument, my follow-up argument, is looking at the comics that we already have, and 3 of them are tied into game content, and I'm talking about Purple Dragon Knights and the Blade Forged, and the Shader Kai. One of them isn't, the Morning Lords. And I want the
Who should have
gnome
been Asinot?
iconic to be like one of the three that are tied into content. And that brings me to the recent 5th edition content that Wizards of the Coast has given us, like the Rage of Demons and Out of the Abyss. The things that are based with demon lords and in the Underdark, and that is exactly where you're going to find deep gnomes. So I am looking for there to be some kind of tie-in content that adds to what we already have that takes place in the Underdark, because we have this whole like Slayer area with like 2 quests in it. No, with 1 quest in it, really. And a couple of portals. And I want to see portals to something else. I want to see, some quest that takes place in a deep gnome village or something like that with some tie-in to the demon lords. And I think that could be great legendary content for the players. So that's also what I'm looking for with the iconic class for gnomes.
Drac, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Bonnie basically stole what I was going to say. So that's
Woohoo!
that's exactly what your deep gnome is. That's how they can pull the deep gnome in and also tie it into what is going on right now in the pen and paper world.
Campaigns.
So it's the perfect mix of both to get us back on track with pen and paper, because right now we're not.
If you guys want to go that route and use, like, I was focusing on the iconic, but if you want to work it into the game, we're facing some crazy things, like crazy, like way beyond like the dragons that we have on our side. So if anyone is crazy enough to deal with that, it's going to be the loopy tinker gnomes that are going to come in with their crazy inventions. We're going to have crazy airships covered in all kinds of ridiculous guns and stuff. We're going to have like explosives that don't even make sense but work. Like just crazy stuff to face the crazy that is coming down on us.
And there's one other thing I would like. This reminds me of one other thing. Now, okay, so religion. I like the religions too. I like having choices with religions. And the problem with gnomes in Eberron is that they don't really have a pantheon. They're more like the sovereign host kind of people. But we still have a gnomic pantheon in the Forgotten Realms that hasn't been touched on. And I don't think this is going to be part of the iconic, but I would like to see that it be there.
Garl Glittergold?
Some kind of like Garl Glittergold maybe, or I don't know, was it Baravan or whatever? I can't say. But yes, Garl Glittergold. You could have them be available, but that's not going to necessarily fit with whatever I expect the iconic gnome to be doing. But I would like to see more of the Forgotten Realms pantheon represented than what we got.
Okay. Completely off topic, but you just mentioned deity, so I have to say it. Devs, domains. You just made warlocks. You just made you made warlocks. You made warlocks. They have packs. Just make it divine flavored, and you're done. You just have to copy and paste. You've already made domains.
So, FailedLegend kind of touched on this a little bit about why not deep gnomes. Drac and Bonnie, can you speak to why not tinker gnomes?
Because we already have artificers.
Well, we already have wizards too.
I mean, a tinker gnome is an argument for having an iconic that is going to be Eberron based and that's going to be an artificer. And I just think there's more outcry for a wizard iconic, even though people have been using the Morning Lords because of some of their abilities as basis for arcane casters. I don't see them going the tinker route because I think it's a much more narrower set to appeal, even though it's something that is iconic about gnomes.
And plus, let's be honest, that would just be the low-hanging fruit for them to do, and that would be way too easy.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that I expect to be doing. That's something I expect to be doing with my non-iconic gnome, So I'm really looking for something that is culturally different than what I see all the other surface gnomes doing. I want something other than a surface gnome, and that just screams something like Deep Gnome to me.
Well, one thing I got to punch in there is we have 3 Forgotten Realms iconics and 1 Eberron. So you got to balance it out a bit here, guys. This is it's nice that we jumped to Forgotten Realms for a little bit of fun, but we can't forget Eberron. Eberron is where we started, and it is a pretty awesome place.
So here's where I'm going to go with this. This is tough because you all made some really good points here. Bonnie knocked herself out because she said that you want the iconic to be something different than the other surface gnomes. But your whole argument, you had so much. We've been talking about gnomes as illusionists, like that whole thing. So I feel like you just said, I want the iconic to be something different than the normal race,
I don't see
which
the
is
racial
exactly
tree
what you're
as being identical. I don't see the racial tree of the iconic. And I did say that I expect Deep Gnomes to maybe have different ability bonuses compared to the surface gnomes because they are a different culture. So they're not going to have the same racial trees.
Right, but you kind of went down that line of, I don't know, this is arbitrary, right? So, but I think I think Drac and Bonnie made a really solid argument for gnome casters being something that is desired, or like having a casting iconic race, something that's really desired. And you mentioned the using the Morning Lord as a caster, which is kind of a workaround. So I'm going on that side, but because Bonnie went that circular route for me, I'm going to give the point to Drac.
Curses.
Tinker Gnomes for life.
I do like Tinker Gnomes though. If I were to think about what iconic, I would actually prefer them to do an iconic gnome as an artificer, because I think if you're going to make, if I kind of think about the different races to do an iconic, kind of in my head, I like the idea of there being a race associated with a class and kind of really fleshing out iconics and having most of them covered. Gnome and Artificer is the only one that really works for me for Artificer. And I think you can make Wizard work for a couple different ones. Like a Drow Wizard could be, it'd be, again, a low-hanging fruit, but...
Yeah, eventually having an iconic for every class would make sense, and Artificer's hard to fit in anything but Gnome.
Exactly. That's kind of where, if you think, well, what's the most iconic race to have for an Artificer? Gnome is...
Oh, yeah, exactly.
If you would have gone
that screams Warlock, so...
Yeah. And if you would have used that route, FailedLegend, what's the most iconic race for Artificer? Gnome? I might have given it to you.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're going to move on to our next question, which is probably the most important question that we can ask today.
Yes.
What should the gnomish dance be? And we're going to start with Bonnie.
I've always been struggling in the camp of twerking gnomes. Just shake their booties.
I don't think gnome have booties.
Booty. Well, they're little booties. That's why they have to work so hard twerking, so they can bring attention to their little booties.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can we please not have twerking anywhere near DDO? Sorry, the internet makes me sick enough as it is. I don't want it in my safe place. Okay.
FailedLegend.
Definitely the safety dance. If we're gonna go something iconic, we gotta go old school with the safety dance.
I'm not sure. Can you describe the safety dance?
Do you not know the song?
I know the song.
I can't
briefly, but
it's kind of hard to describe. I would have to get up and dance, I suppose.
Please no, Drac.
It has to be the iconic dance of the Oompa Loompa. They will put their little hands in the air and they will sing a little song and they will dance around in a circle.
So like cartwheels?
Not so much cartwheels. Just think of the Oompa Loompa in Charlie, not the new horrible travesty that was a movie. The original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie. With the Oompa Loompas, when they're singing their song, they do their little shuffle. They put their hands in the air and they dance. That is the gnome dance. The
So I just want to make sure it's good. So we're not talking about like what the humans do, right? Where they just kind of put their
Correct.
hands up and kick their
But
feet
it's got
out.
the spin
Right.
in it.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
The spin makes it different.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a little spin.
That is even more. That makes
Okay,
more
so what I want to hear is why your dance is better than the other dances.
I'm concerned that like Failed Legends' safe place is somewhere where people are like trying to kill you with swords and weapons all the time.
What's gonna say?
I don't think
grew up on
twerking.
it.
I don't think twerking is dangerous compared to that. So, I think gnomes would like to get funky, and that's why I'm very pro twerking. Because
Do
funk
we really
is
wanna
kind
see
of
what
like
gnome booties, though? Is
To
that
be fair-
really what we want to see?
To
Funk
be
is- you know-
definitely not. And to be fair, the safety dance and the Oompa Loompa dance are kind of close. It's basically a lot of bouncing around with your hands up in the air and
I
spinning.
can agree with the safety dance being their theme song because of the electronic nature of the music.
Yeah. Well,
I don't
I'd say
know about
that
the
or
safety
either the electronica by oh my god, I can't even think what they're called. They do Stronger, Better, Faster. Whatever, forget me. I can't remember what they're called.
I need a little
Mike-
more here. I'm not really a dancing expert, so sell me on the dancing.
My only question to Bonnie is, if we have twerking gnomes, are we required to tip them dollar bills?
No, plat. We don't have dollar bills.
Okay, that's
You
right.
have to tip in plat. Make it rain plat.
So what you're saying is while they're twerking, they will also be making jingly sounds because there's going to be plaid in their pants.
Hey, they're illusionists. They can cast a little light thing over their heads as they're dancing. Oh yeah. Hey, I just came up with a new answer. Disco. Maybe I should change my answer. They're illusionists. They should come with disco balls.
All right. Just because of the electronic music comment, I'm going with Bonnie.
EDM wins every time.
I did like the
Woot.
how you brought that in thematically to gnomes and being technology based, and
They're gonna
Okay.
have some electric bass in there.
Mari in the chat room is calling for the Carlton dance. I was kind of when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking there were two things that kind of came to mind. One is where we get a line of people and then they like alternate who goes up and who goes down, and they just kind of like go up and down to the beat. I thought that would be kind of a good one for gnomes, which could be a
That's
really
a
fun.
little bit Oompa Loompa too.
Yeah, it could also be kind of a fun like group thing. You could get like a bunch of them together, right, and get the timing right. And the other one that I thought about was I think it's called a Cossack dance, but it's what I think of like the traditional Russian dance, where they like
Oh.
squat low and kick your feet out, and then kind of come up.
That would
and then-
totally be different from the
Oh,
dances
that
that are
would.
already in game.
Yeah,
Did not even think about that.
that was
But
That
I
would
can
really be
see
a
a gnome
different body
doing that, though,
movement.
yeah.
that one just strikes me as a good gnome dance for some reason.
Well, we get two dances. So
Yeah.
listen up, devs. That was a good suggestion.
All right.
Points to you, Patrick.
Oh, well, thank you.
Patrick wins that round.
Patrick wins that round.
So our last question for debates, and this is not gnome based, but it's relevant to kind of what people have been talking about. And this comes from Gratch on Galanda. Should low-level mobs thematically be in epic level content? And we're going to start with Failed Legend.
Honestly, it really depends on how they're handled. If you just throw in kobolds and go, yes, fight these kobolds, they're now level 30. No. But a really good example of how to do it correctly is the Three Barrel Cove, where they created like airship crews. So it made sense that, okay, these guys have been around since like we were level 1 and have followed us up the line, and now they're this badass pirate crew that we have to fight. So they are almost adventurers in themselves. Like they probably have class levels of some sort. So it needs to make sense thematically. So having a strong story as to why a bunch of kobolds managed to get up to level 30 is going to make the difference for me. But in general, I'd like to see newer, stronger races, unless there's a thematic reason.
See where we at. Drac?
I kind of agree with FailedLegend on it, actually. As long as it makes sense for the theme or the mood of the dungeon, sure. I just don't want to see them just get, and I hate to say this word, but get lazy and just make a dungeon and just, we'll just put kobolds in this dungeon because we can. So as long as it fits and it makes sense, why not?
Bonnie?
Well, I don't think I've run into any kind of low-level mob thematically, because I know that I haven't fought any Clan Gnashtooth in epic level content. So to me, that is what we fight in terms of kobolds in Creeping Death are thematically different from what we fight in the Waterworks. You know, they're kobolds that have come from Shavarath or something like that. But there's certain restrictions to the game that make the whole purist thematical concept a little bit tricky comparing low-level content to epic level content. And the first part of that is that the game cap hasn't been static. The in-game content that we had at level 10 had a dragon in it. And now the game cap is level 30. And if the game cap had never been level 10, maybe we wouldn't fight our first dragon in the Vault of Night, at the heroic version of Vault of Night. But it existed, and so that content thematically exists. So part of it is I do think the game does a certain measure thematically to separate the different pools of kobolds, etc., that we face in the game by having them be associated with a different culture, a different place of origin, a different source of power. But there are some constraints based off of what they can put in the game that's new out of the vast content that they have available in the monster manual. There's going to be a limit to how many new monsters they can add to the game. And this past year, we had Slad, Irenes, and Archons kind of represented as something that we fight against for the first time, as well as at least getting some representation of Zugat Moy as a demon lord to fight. I would have liked to have seen swarms of Myconids running around in the Temple of Elemental Evil, and we didn't get that. So I can see, where people might be saying, hey, I want more of that. But we did get a giant frog. So thematically, I think we are getting some new mobs in epic level content, but that has to be kind of balanced with what already exists. And I think it is being addressed by giving things a different place to come from, a different story that inspires where their powers come from and why they are maybe CR30 versus someone else who is CR4.
Just something quick. You mentioned mycenoids and stuff. High-level content is great and stuff, but I would definitely like to see the start of Temple of Elemental Evil added later. Like, honestly, we've done the Harbor and Korthos so many times. It would be nice to see a TR version of the first couple of levels for the beginning of Temple of Elemental Evil when you're going through the town there and whatnot and helping out the people.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give us
Instead
something a little bit different.
You get those like little bandits outside of the temple that you can run into. That's as close as they get to representing anything outside the temple.
Oh, I know, but they
nice.
could, they're smart writers. They can make it a little more interesting than that. As long as they stick within the plot.
I guess the last part is also just like the practical business sense of it. I mean, Drac brought up the idea of being lazy, and sure, we don't want anybody being lazy, but at the same time, I think they have limited resources. So I don't mind them reusing oozes per se, especially because they threw in arcane oozes in there, and I think arcane oozes at one point were an in-game monster. And the thing is, talking about oozes being in, like, say, legendary content, as well as being in stuff that we do in the harbor, one of the reasons why I think people complain maybe about seeing them again is that they're one of the most irritating, annoying things to battle because they can ruin all your stuff. And, that makes them potent, that those or like, say, rust monsters and oozes in the Temple of Elemental Evil can really screw you up, even if you are an epic or legendary character, just as much as they can screw you up if you're a heroic character. And that, in a sense, also gives them power. That there's something that, if you're too big for your britches, there's always something that can kind of bring you down to reality.
So
Well,
go ahead.
one thing that they might try doing is, I don't know how hard this would be, like art asset wise, or stick magical looking armor on the Cobalt models. Like, I'm sure it's not that hard to transplant one of the PC models onto
They
the
do
thing.
have
Just
different armor on some
Oh, I
of the
know,
Kobolds,
but
but
Yeah.
anyways,
give them
so
Cobalt
I want to
giant
kind of
swords, I mean.
I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but so I kind of want to address a few things we're talking about. One is, Drax said you don't want it to feel lazy, and I get that they're going to reuse assets.
Right. That, I mean, has to happen.
Right.
That's just the
But I think
nature of game design, is you're going to have to reuse stuff.
But I think there's a difference between reusing assets and having it feel lazy. Right?
And I agree. Oh yeah, totally.
Do you want to speak to that a little bit, Drac?
Well, I think the problem that a lot of players have is it comes off to them as lazy. It's like, oh, they couldn't even bother to come up with a new monster for this. They just threw in more, kobolds, or they threw in more skeletons here, or whatever the case may be. And that's not what's happening, but I think that's what players perceive it to be as it is happening. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that argument comes from this place where people are really concerned about the mechanics of their gameplay. They want to face creatures with different scripts and different strategies when they're in new content, rather than the same old hopping kobolds. I think that's probably where it really comes from. I think thematically, they're doing the job. Maybe strategically and in terms of gameplay, it does have a little bit of the same old feel. But I don't think that's what the question was phrased as, maybe. So I'm kind of like skirting it there.
I think where this question really kind of came from a lot of players was creeping death, which the whole dungeon is essentially, other than the mechanic with the giant cube, it's almost exclusively kobolds and oozes in a sewer. So as a
Felt
closing
like a rehash of Water
a
Wings.
closing argument, what I want you guys to do is, just as a closing argument, does that feel thematically appropriate? Did it need something else? Does that make sense for the question?
Feel like I'm playing, if I feel like if I have a hard time telling my level 24 character from my level 3 character when I'm based on the quest I'm in, there's an issue.
Drac or Bonnie?
For what the dungeon was and what the story of the dungeon was, I think it was totally appropriate.
I do too, because the core of Creeping Death was this giant red gelatinous cube with a kobold inside of it. And so I expect gelatinous beings and more kobolds to be serving the boss of that dungeon.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So it makes perfect sense for the dungeon to be filled with that stuff. And, as a legendary quest, it kind of it rocked my world in terms of what the structure of the quest was, even though it defies all theories of Zerg and running through dungeons that exist in the game. But oozes mess you up, even if you are level 30. And so to me, that made it fun. And I hadn't fought oozes. Well, Temple of Elemental has oozes, but I think there's an ooze gap in the game. You fight them at lower levels, and then there's this gap there where you don't fight oozes for a while, really. And to have them come and destroy all of your gear that you have farmed and worked for and stuff like that, and then realize that you're just this chump with a sword. I mean, that feels a little bit legendary to me, or maybe it's just a little bit humiliating. I don't know. If you've seen me play, there's a lot of humiliation and that kind of stuff. But I think it was appropriate based off of what the quest was about.
Oh, to clarify, I didn't say that one specifically was not thematically appropriate. I meant in general. If I feel like I'm still playing a level 3 quest,
Yeah, I got that.
If it makes sense thematically, that's great.
Which
Awesome.
I think really what it comes down to, where this question generally is coming from, at least from my perspective, is it's kind of directed towards creeping death, and I think it definitely works to have kobolds and oozes. I think the issue for most players is really that it's all kobolds and oozes. We see kobolds, these fiendish kobolds running around with other types of monsters, why aren't some of those types of monsters running around in this? Like, there's one horned devil, and everything else is kobolds and oozes.
That's because they're all in To Curse the Sky. All the other creatures.
Yeah,
Right,
I don't buy
because-
it.
Yeah.
Thematically,
I think that's where it kind of rubs players the wrong way, is because you go through the whole dungeon fighting kobolds and oozes, and it does feel like you're playing a level 3 character, an epic level. It's just scaled
Period.
up. So,
but
I mean, I wouldn't have minded had they thrown in a new additional kind of sewer-friendly creature. Like if they put some giant frogs in there, I wouldn't have minded.
they
I
put
wouldn't have
some
minded
slots
if
in
they
there.
put something else in there.
I'm just saying what I
You
think.
know,
Where I think
I
where this
would have
question is
actually
coming from.
minded had they had just more slots. I like that there's no slots in that dungeon, but there's slots in the other one. I like, I don't know. Is there really a perfect answer for that? But
What would you guys
for the
say
complaints
to?
that I've heard, I just don't think it's realistic. I think it's a different kind of expectation, and it's kind of like a Sunday gamer kind of expectation when I hear that argument or that question.
Since we're talking about like how it's obviously difficult for them to make an entirely new race or whatever, an enemy type. What about just, I don't know if this is a thing in their tech, but what if they just increased the size, made big kobolds? Like, at least that would be
Well,
at least
it'd be an
slightly different.
option. I think that the thing that I keep going back to, by the way, it's just for, let's do the bookkeeping first, and then I'm going to chime in a little bit. Everyone made great points. Everyone gets a point. So
Yay!
on this one, I think where this question comes from, if I can play psychiatrist, is like I think about they've used low level or quote low level mobs in dungeons that are higher level. Now, granted, it may not be higher level now, but look at Rainbow in the Dark. It's got rust monsters, which are, they're a low-level monster, rust monster. But it works. It makes sense that they would be in Rainbow in the Dark, and they're used in a thematic way. Now,
One thing
that's not to say that kobolds and oozes aren't thematic in a sewer. It's just, it doesn't... because of the way that it's going, you're dealing with this devil invasion, and then you're fighting. I know they're dressed up differently, but you're still fighting kobolds and oozes at the core point. And I think where players are reacting to it is, it doesn't feel like you're doing anything different than level 1 or 2 or 3, right? Like that, you're fighting kobolds and oozes in a sewer. If you boil it down to that point, it's the same as the early levels, which is I think where players are active. It doesn't have that new kind of feel and excitement and as creative a use as we've seen with some of those other reusing of mobs.
But like, if you're going to boil it down, the game becomes, well, the game is I'm doing a quest again.
Sure.
If you keep boiling things down level by level, and I think that's just.
But what I'm kind of trying to say is there's a difference between what they did with Creeping Death and the kobolds and oozes fight. Like, I'm not talking about the cube, the death cube. I like that mechanic. I wish that quest actually had more of that, had less fighting, more of that, and even mixed the fighting with that cube. I think that would be more interesting. But I think what players are reacting to is there's a difference between what they did in Creeping Death with fighting kobolds and oozes and what's happening in, say, just because it pops into my mind as a really good example, Rainbow in the Dark, where you're fighting earth elementals and rust monsters and gnolls, which we fought before in the game, but they're mixed up more. You look at Rainbow in the Dark, it's got a wide variety of monsters, and they're all kind of appropriate to the area of the dungeon that you're at, if that makes sense.
But
Can I just quickly drop one more thing? Earlier I mentioned character levels, and I don't think anyone really understood what I meant. I think
did.
one of the problems...
I got what you meant.
Okay, can I quickly...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Like, instead of having a larger Earth Elemental with more HP but does the same stuff, what if we brought in an Earth Elemental that did something that we didn't expect? Like, give it new abilities that it wouldn't normally have. It's been around for a long time, so maybe it casts Earthquake. Maybe let's learn how to do that. Like, just shaking things up a little bit can make all the difference in a higher level quest. That said, no rats. Stop giving me rats. I don't want to fight rats.
well, that's more like a question of scripting. But I think going back to Rainbow in the Dark, you make a good point in terms of Rainbow in the Dark, but not necessarily how the mobs are used. I don't think that's what makes Rainbow in the Dark this, you know, brand new experience. It's the whole dark mechanic added on to what monsters
Well,
are
sure.
in there.
It's a holistic thing.
And I think maybe that's really the answer to maybe the legendary content that maybe people are disappointed with. It's not necessarily just that it's oozes and kobolds, it's that you're just fighting them and bashing on them again. That the new things in that quest are the kind of workarounds to the creeping death, and to see more of that, to see more of a dungeon where you aren't just fighting, but that you are having to do some other mechanic to completing the quest successfully, is maybe thematically what we're looking for. But I don't think that's something that you necessarily blame the mobs for. That's more the dungeon design itself overall for your missions kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with. I'm kind of with you guys. Low-level mobs can be used in higher-level content. I've done it as a dungeon master. There's ways to tweak monsters to make them appropriate and stuff. I think creeping death. The reason why this question is kind of a prevalent question right now is, I think creeping death is an example of one where, while the monsters were scaled well, it didn't differentiate itself enough from those monsters at low level content compared to those monsters at epic level content, legendary content. It didn't feel different. It felt like you were playing too low. It didn't feel like something different. I think that's what players are kind of reacting to. In any case, we're going to, let's see. So it looks like Bonnie and FailedLegend are tied with Drac at 2 points, Bonnie and FailedLegend at 3 points. Congratulations. Nice job. Great debate. Great conversation about gnomes and other fun stuff. We are going to move on to game news. So with game news, we got a producer's letter. And I'll just kind of read through it. I might skim a little bit, but it's a pretty short letter. So this is coming from Severlin, the executive producer for DDO, and he's writing to update to their plans for the coming months. The first thing he wanted to mention was we've been getting yearly producers' letters. He wants to speak more often to the community. So instead of a year-long list, he's giving room to respond to wants through the year. That means the letter will focus more on the quarter ahead. And he'll be back this spring for an update. Which I kind of took this to be just kind of twofold with this. One, I think it's a great strategy because they've been doing yearly producers letters, and halfway through the year, things change and they start going a different direction. And everyone goes, "But you said in the producers letter." So I think that it's great that they're leaving some room to maneuver, if it will.
And more communication is always good too.
Right.
So.
And I think Sev's actually been doing a really good job of that, personally.
Which, honestly, I've played several different online games or games that just in general evolve. And say what you will about the devs, whatever your opinion is, I think they're doing a great job. But they are so close to the community. Like, they come and talk on the forums. That's not a normal thing.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of players kind of react negatively towards the devs and how much they're communicating and that they don't listen to players. And granted, I don't have experience with MMOs, but other than DDO, but my impression is we're pretty darn lucky that the devs come on the forum and say, "This is what we're thinking." We give feedback, and some of the things change.
Yeah,
because I don't get the impression that happens in other MMOs. I get the impression that things change, and then people complain about the changes, and they don't get a chance to comment on it until it comes live. I don't know if that's true, but that's the impression I get.
At least from every other game I've played.
So I figure that any time that they change something based on player feedback is a win for the players. Plus, I like talking with the guys. Granted, I get to actually interview them and have conversations with them, so I have a little bit more of a direct kind of communication when I do get to communicate with them, which is a lot of fun. But it also kind of gives you the impression that you're talking with other people, not these mythical beings in the sky. I think a lot of players can have a perception of.
Yeah.
In any case, before I get accused of being a total fanboy, I do like the devs.
I think we're all fanboys and girls. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be playing this game.
Well, the devs have said too that they appreciate that, people getting upset about things, if nothing else, illustrates their passion for playing the game, which I think is a fantastic thing to hear from the devs, because we get it. You really like this game, so we don't take it personally when you are really upset about things. So I think that's a good. Anyways, so going back to the producer's letter, looking back on 2015, they gave themselves an ambitious schedule and delivered a huge amount of rating, questing, classwork, and more, which I think is pretty true. And I think kind of in our state of the year review quest, I think a couple of us actually mentioned essentially that it felt like they were perhaps a little too ambitious and had to cut a few corners here and there. I think it was a good year overall. Probably one of the better years we've had, honestly. But some of the things that he listed they accomplished: 4 raids. Granted, 3 of them are essentially just legendary-ified.
Legendified.
They're legendary versions of raids we already had,
Legendified.
but that takes some work. 3 monster manuals, 11 quests, including Temple of Elemental Evil. I don't know if they're including that as 1 or 2. I didn't actually count. They got Rogue and Ranger class updates, the Warlock class, new Night Revels, the random loot system, which I will graciously give them.
2 words in that sentence.
Yeah, I did. It does say greatly improved random loot system.
I cannot make comment as I have not been able to play the last month. So
it's like I said, it's a good first step. I reserve the right to change my opinion of the randomly loot system later, but it's a good start. Legendary green still and level cap of 30 along with legendary and epic destiny feats. And I look at that list and I go like 4 raids, great. I would say they did a fair to good job with all of them. 3 monster manuals, which I personally kind of half ignore, in the sense that I like what they give to the game, but I don't really actively seek completing them out.
Honestly, I ignored them for the first really long time, but shortly, a month before my computer decided to stop working, I started picking them up, and it's actually a fun little thing to follow along with. It makes it interesting, and you get some cool rewards.
Yeah, I love the rewards. I like the mechanics. It's just not something that I personally like. Oh, I need to go kill 1,000 air elementals.
No,
why do I go do that? I don't play that way.
I like it when they kind of pop in as a surprise that I got expertise or a hunter in something. It's a nice plus.
I don't do it on
I still want more. I'm in favor of more of them, just to be clear. 11 new quests. Temple of Elemental Evil, I thought, particularly part 2, is probably my favorite new content of the year. I just liked how it looked and running around. It was fun. Personally, I didn't play a lot of the new quests a lot because I was working on... I'm still kind of working on it. My game goals were not really... were more about leveling and getting all of my characters up to 32-point builds, which, when you have 14 characters and only 2 of them were 32-point builds at the start of the year, that's a lot of stuff to focus on. And rating, so I wasn't really focusing on the new requests as much. But I thought they had a good range of quests. Rogue and Ranger class updates, I think, were big successes. With maybe the caveat of it being a little bit more work to do on a Crane Archer, which they've said. Warlock, I think, was a big success. Night Revels, I think, was a big success. I think level 30 was done well. I don't have any complaints about... I like the new feats. I think they make interesting choices. Green Steel and Random Loot, I feel like, are things that I have to wait a little bit to really comment on. I haven't actually made Green Steel yet, even though I've been running the raid ad nauseum. I kind of been waiting to figure out what I'm going to do. But I think those 2 systems particularly are kind of too new to really figure out yet. I mean, players are still trying to figure out Green Steel. But it's a good list.
And it's still changing with patches at this point, so it's fresh.
So is Random Loot. I mean, Random Loot's going to be changing too. So
yeah, there's interesting things there, but it's not done. So
from what I saw on the forums, it seems interesting, but unfortunately, I haven't actually had a chance to utilize it, so I can't really say much either.
He also mentions that they made quality of life improvements, like being able to craft from your shared bank, which is great. Consume tomes at any level, which I really like, and a new improved DDO store. Jeff would probably send me hate mail if I didn't mention the mouse wheel bug got fixed. The raid runes. So I look at this year, and I'm pretty happy with the year. So good job. Pat on your back, devs. A good to fair year. New stuff. The main focus this quarter will be DDO's biggest milestones, their 10th anniversary. Woohoo! And let's take a moment and appreciate that. That's a long time for a game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's games that do not last that long.
DDO is old.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later in the communities. We'll be throwing a big party towards the end of February with gifts, prizes, events, and surprises. I like surprises. We will debut a free multi-character level dungeon similar to the way the Night Revel dungeons work. That will be a tongue-in-cheek story featuring some of DDO's most popular and enduring characters and NPCs. If Nat Gan's not in here, there will be pitchforks and torches. Do you remember Nat Gan?
Oh yeah, I mean he's still standing in the marketplace, isn't he?
No,
that's his brother.
Oh,
he's been
that's his
gone.
brother. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about Jeets. Okay, I'm thinking about Jeets
Jeets would be good.
and Eritricos.
And here's kind of one of the more interesting lines. It'll also give you the opportunity to defeat some of the quote devs in battle. Yes, I plan to try and kill you in game.
Yes,
That's a
I'm
winner.
Really intrigued by this. It sounds. I like the tongue in cheek.
I love
It
that.
sounds
as
really
a thing.
interesting. Now it sounds like we're only gonna get one dungeon, which okay, fine. We're getting gnomes, which we'll talk about in a minute. So it's kind of gonna be like the Warlock update, which I think is fine. It used to be that they would alternate updates. Like one update would be systems, the next one would be content. So in any case, update 30 will also debut the long-anticipated gnome race, along with the Deep Gnome Iconic. So we know we're getting a Deep Gnome Iconic. They'll debut an updated Kenneth crafting system that ties in nicely with the new random generated loot system.
Thank goodness.
They're also bringing in the Bug Zapper in the coming weeks to get rid of some of the things they've been hearing from us about, which I think is also great. I've been seeing, it's kind of fun. Like, you see more and more feedback as time goes on that fix more less content in the next update, fix more bugs. So looks like we're going to get a pretty big bug update. And then they also give us some pictures of gnomes, which we haven't seen yet.
There's a serious problem here.
Look
at that nose. The nose is too thin and normal looking. It needs to be.
Well, I mean, it can be thin, but we need to have more of a side view. Like, I gotta see how far that nose extends from the face.
It doesn't seem to
'cause it needs
extend
to be
very
longer.
far.
Yeah, it needs
Needs
to
to be a little bit
look like it's
longer.
got like tiny little grapes in either side. Like it needs to be very bulbous, and their fingers need to be like fat and pudgy.
And I think they could be even shorter. Now, I mean, I guess part of this is these are Everon gnomes, I think, as the base maybe, and they maybe aren't as pudgy as the.
I think Bonnie
Forgotten
wants a
Realms
nose that's
version.
getting at least to the bottom lip. And
Yeah,
into the beard.
I want some distance there.
All
But
right,
look
I
at
some
think,
of the
that
options.
beard, though. Look at the beard.
no,
it is a
no,
handsomely
mustache.
groomed beard.
Mustache. I think we need to feed this gnome like a couple all-you-can-eat buffets, cut off a couple inches, take off that ugly beard, put a mustache, and get that nose a little bit bigger, or a lot bigger, actually.
Make sure that the gnomes can wear glasses, like as one of the options for facial detail.
And not the ones
Now,
that
I know
like,
dwarves get them.
not the ones that halflings have, because that's
any
like
case,
kind of more like a Robin Hood like mask as opposed to a pair of glasses.
We're going to continue on in the game news. Update 29 had patch 1 on Wednesday, January 30th. Some things that got changed. Chimerian's Knight's Training Tactics DC bonus is now more consistently applied. Master of Knowledge Mental Honing effect no longer applies if the character has Enlightened Spirit's Eldritch Aura active. I guess it was applying to that, which is kind of silly because the description doesn't say it should. See, players with the Construct Exemplar are now healed by tavern food and drink, which I think this is one of those notes that's like, oh yeah, that could be a problem. If you can't eat, you can't buy the Warforged version, so if you're not getting healed by that stuff, that's a problem. Legendary Green Steel damage over time effects now have cooldowns. Acid damage is half a second. Magma is quarter second. Legendary Green Steel, call kindred being now summons its appropriate creature. Augment effects are reapplied to a player when logging in, so you don't have to These are all Legendary Green Steel. Damage effects generally no longer scale with spell power, which brought a lot of sad frowny faces because people got used to them being pretty
people
beefy,
who
which I get.
farm to get stuff because it was scaling are probably all sad.
I'm guessing
now.
people didn't realize it was scaling for the most part. They just looked at the damage and went, wow, that's a lot of damage, which is pretty fun to see. It's always nice to see a lot of damage. See, skill bonuses that incorrectly indicate an enhancement bonus type are now competence bonuses, which I think means that they don't stack with as much things. Items with concentration benefits now list a proper bonus. Ability score upgrade tome bundles are no longer considered ingredients and will no longer go into ingredients bags. It's always weird.
That freaked me out the first time I saw it. I was like, "Where's my tome? It wasn't
delivered. If you ever buy
delivered.
something
Where's my
from
tome?"
the store and you can't find it, check your bags before you do anything else. It's a weird thing. It's come up time and again for different things, and they end up in bags. So just check your bags first before you totally freak out. Armor and shields no longer regain weapon-specific effects like Keen. The Raid Rune trade-in recipes for the new update 29 shields now show their items' names. Blinding Feeder properly blinds targets. See, deception stuff should work better. Fixed description for insightful and quality sheltering. Proper level of tome rewards now appear high-level content. However,
Yay!
mnemonic potions have not yet been fixed.
Right.
See
Correct
other
me if
stuff.
this is just a little bit ahead or something. Wasn't there something to do with Intimidate being changed or something?
Intimidate did change, but that was with the last patch.
Oh, okay.
Scare protection is returned to the treasure table, so you can now safely get those out. Random generated loot will no longer sometimes appear blink. See, inevitable thunder punch is now properly considered a stun for purposes of stun immunity. Most non-boss and mini-boss monsters in Legendary Elite raids now do somewhat less damage, and there was much rejoicing. They still do a lot of damage, though. We'll say. Legendary Shroud. They've reduced the hit points and damage reduction for portals. They also made some adjustments to combat exploiting, as in you have to done all the prior quest objectives before looting a chest in the Shroud. There was a creative way to circumvent some of the raid. Same with Tempest Spine. The runes now apply proper healing wards, and the runes drop on exiting the dungeon. And they fixed some stuff to work with the Emboldened Metamagic feat. Let's see. Other stuff. Players Council applications. If you'd like to apply to 2016 Players Council, you can reapply if you were on the council in 2014.
Woohoo!
I think you can't do 2015 and 2016.
No.
Unless you are specifically invited, maybe. There was a notice that PayPal service was temporarily unavailable. I believe that's still the case. At least I haven't seen anything that says it's re-available. Bonus days, you can get plus 10% VIP XP through January 18th. They also have the Mysterious Remnant special rewards available through, I believe, Thursday or Friday. Store stuff. Through January 21st, you can get 25% off of Shared Bank storage, character bank upgrades, select storage bag, Shared Bank Platinum. You can also get a greater remove negative level potion use coupon, one per account. Again, I'm not going to read the code because they're kind of long and annoying to read.
Incomprehensible.
Yeah. Vanity codes, I think, is what they call them when they're nicer, and they haven't gotten that tech done yet. DDO Chronicle 174th version, LSD 37's character builder has been updated, which is the update to 29, I believe. Lygraph is working on a damage simulator, which sounds pretty cool. Damage calculations are always kind of a fun exercise, but they're really hard to... it's easy to compare a weapon in a vacuum, but once you start getting into attack speeds and things, it gets really complicated really fast. If you do want to learn more about weapon calculation, my old blog has some stuff on. I did a 16 blog series on calculating weapon damage, but I did not get into things like attack speed. I did do fortification though. Gritty is getting DDO to work with surround sound, which is kind of a fun little read. The High Lords of Malkir are doing teaching raids. They're doing heroic and legendary Hound of Zoriat tonight, January 16th on Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Okay, there's an Arganesson-based guild, and I'm going to butcher this name because it has apostrophes in it. Brigand du Arthaze, I think, shares resources looking to grow. The Chronicle comment is, how often does a dragon eat? Failed Legend, how often does a dragon eat?
Every time an adventurer comes into his cave.
Good answer. Bonnie?
That's what my answer was.
Drac,
Sorry.
do you have a different answer?
Whenever it wants to.
Good answer. Yeah, that's kind of pretty much my top two answers. Whenever it wants to, whenever something comes by to eat. Let's see, fan site news. We got a shout out for discussing our legendary raids last week. DDO players news finds the King of Korthos. Was talking with Pineleaf and Draculetta on that. BonnieBew is streaming new shows. DDO Wiki Talk celebrates the Wiki's 10th anniversary. DDO Gamer wrote about res shrines, and the Order of Syncletica looked at venomous weapons, and Mickey looked at raid completion times. I think this one where she had like a big spreadsheet of completion times, which is pretty impressive bookkeeping. And they are getting ready to celebrate DDO's 10th anniversary with a, quote, thing. They want you to give a kind of an advice quote in character without breaking the fourth wall, which is surprisingly difficult, actually.
It is very difficult.
Let's see. And let's see. DDO videos. Bonnie, Draculetta, and Pineleaf ran the Shroud 3-man, which was impressive, and was a hoot.
It was it was like a learning experience.
Yeah,
It was a lot of fun.
You almost didn't make it a few times. I mean, you had a wide level. I think Pineleaf and Drac were more or less at level, with Bonnie bringing.
Yeah, we
bringing
were
in the power.
19.
If
And I
I
think
was,
Bonnie
if
was
I
the
was
first
still
one to-
level 19, we would have never gotten out of part 2, I think.
Yeah.
Because it would have taken too long. We would have gotten that far, and then we would have run out of time.
I'm waiting for someone to solo legendary, because people did heroic Shroud solo, so probably ways down the road. But if you want to watch that hilarity, you can do that. We'll link to that in the show notes. Axel talked about the producer's letter in his new video. DDO Players News has a poll on what fantasy book series should be a quest chain. Interesting idea there. DDO Gamer interviewed a players council, someone who was on the players council for 2015, about why you should be on the 2016 council, why you should apply. He's also doing his Gamey Awards, so you can go and vote for various. It's basically like an Oscar or Emmy kind of idea, voting for the best of such and such things. DDO Players News had their 67th episode. Damsels of DDO just came out with the 32nd episode. Even Note had a blog on the best feat ever. I'll give you a hint, and it involves confetti. BioBreak talked about what makes a good dungeon. Nice little short article on pros and cons about what's good and what's not so good in dungeons. DDO Gaming also reacted to the producer's letter. And there was, I'm going to link to, Thunder Monkey posted a spreadsheet. It's a Google spreadsheet that's about named armor. So you can compare named armors by level, by AC, all of that fun stuff. DDOcast news. I haven't told anyone else this, the people that are actually involved. There may not be a DDOcast plat this week. I have a new big thing on my plate that will probably... may not be home at normal time on Tuesday. So we may not have a DDOcast plat this week, but we are still trying to... I think we've had someone have to re-roll every week for the last, 4 or 5 sessions. We've been having a bit of bum luck with that. It might have to do with our zerging nature of permadeath.
Oh yeah, no,
Mhm.
the minions love
Yeah.
my style of playing when we're doing permadeath.
We have a very aggressive play style with permadeath. Also, in general gaming news, MMORPG is continuing their Test of Time series, and they did their second part for DDO, which is a really interesting article to read. 'Cause remember, we're coming up to 10 years, and I'm just going to read the final paragraph. I'll link to you can read the rest of the article, but I like this final paragraph, and I thought it was a pretty fair statement. It says, "Now it's time to answer the question: does DDO stand the test of time?" The writer says he'll have to say that it does. Sure, the game has not come through the past decade unscathed. It has its flaws, and they show. However, it does have more than enough strengths to make up for those shortcomings. While DDO could never be his, quote, main game, it is one that he does jump back to for a few days at a time every few months to scratch that itch. DDO manages to offer that D&D fix in a unique way and one that maintains the spirit of the original pen and paper game. Even all those years later, it's still a recommended play for anyone who loves MMOs and D&D. I think it was a good summary. Lightning Post. We were talking last week in Legendary Raids, and we weren't sure about Consecrate Ground, Crusade, working on the dogs. It's a 10% damage bonus. It's not plus weapon like we were thinking. It does show up in your buff bar, and it does show up on the dogs. So it looks like it does work on the dogs. Something else I noticed while I was investigating this that we didn't talk about for Hound of Zoriat, if you have R of Purification from that same tree, it does affect the dog's pre-charm and can give them up to a minus 25 per damage per hit. So you may want to turn that off if you're going to be around dogs beforehand. Day News wrote in about our episode regarding the various legendary raids. And he said, in regards to Legendary Shroud, having a mechanic rogue or artificer in the party is a big help. Rat Construct works on the portals and crystals and will drastically boost the speed at which the entire party can bring them down. It's true. I used to use Rat Construct on my rogue back in the days for the House Caneth raids a lot because there were constructs there.
I'm still of the opinion that should be a passive effect. It's not often enough that it should be active.
Maybe. My problem now is it's in the mechanic tree, which is the one that I don't really go into very much on my rogue. So. I'm going to investigate it, but I've been thinking about whether or not I want to do it, but my rogue's not at that level, so I don't have to make that choice yet. It's great. In response to my comment, if you only have a dinky thrower for the crystals, he recommends replacing with Dagon's Mallet. It's pretty easy to find. It's in the Thunder Forge. It's usually pretty cheap in the auction house, and packs a decent punch. It's a good one. Otherwise, one with Destruction can be really nice, too, since Fort Reduction gives a chance for other people's attacks to crit. And also, Rat Construct. Actually, I got like a thrower of like Holy Smiting, which was great for Lord of Blades. In the last stage of the Shroud, he rather enjoys the new one. Another place where having a rogue comes in handy with place traps since they work on the mobs and will usually have DCs to be effective. The mobs there do have lower CRs than the rest of the raid. So, the survey question for the week comes from Strikeout on Thelenis. Do you think iconics are something that should be further developed? And we'll start with Draculetta.
Sure, always. More development is good, and they can always go back and tweak what they have.
Bonnie?
I prefer quests over iconics.
Yeah, I'd probably put
I'm
myself
gonna
in the
say
same boat.
No.
I'd like to see... Here's kind of my thinking. Like, after they finish the class passes, I think iconics would be a good place to maybe put some of that...
Yes.
That effort. Because the nice thing about, like, new races are cool, but the thing about iconics is it gives you past lives where races don't. And
that's one thing we didn't touch on at all with the Gnome iconic
true.
is what benefit it might give with the iconic past lives.
Interesting question. For another time, probably. But I think if you add in those iconics and new classes, you give that group of folks something to keep working towards. Because there are people that a big part of their enjoyment of the game is pursuing those past lives. So if they run out of past lives, they run out of that kind of bug that drives them. So I think there's value in adding them.
I'd really like to see at least one iconic for each class at some point. Like, not, like, obviously all
I'd
right
go
now.
more
eventually.
race than class, but I'd like to see a variety, right? I would really like to see them avoid duplicating.
No, if they do, like, another paladin or another...
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd like
Cleric.
I'd like them to not duplicate them.
No, if they're going to make a new one, it has to be one of the classes they haven't done yet.
Yeah, which is what, when we were back on the topic, I think that's kind of why I like the gnome as an artificer, because it probably won't happen, but that's kind of the one that best, I think, fits that. In any case, we're going to move into closing out the show, and I completely forgot to update my pages. Anyways, hazards of talking and producing at the same time. You don't update your screenshots for when you make them. In any case, we're going to do last calls. FailedLegend, do you want to plug your Minion Monday stream?
Yes, people, please go see the Minion Monday. I haven't been there for a while, but once I fix up my computer, I will be back. I love you, Minions!
You can always go see Mari. Kiwi for Mari.
Yeah.
Yes, Mari.
Who is
Mari.
listening in the chat room? Hi, Mari. See, Drac, you want to plug your stuff?
Sure, you can find me at DDOPlayers.com. We cover all things about the game. We also cover D&D tabletop and also board games. And I will give a little plug. Yesterday, Wizards of the Coast released some teaser images for the new adventure, and it looks very Ravenlofty.
Bonnie?
Oh my.
Yeah.
I guess I mainly played twitching at twitch.tv/BonnieBew. I am doing a static group on Thursdays on Argonescent server called Ladies Night from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm also doing a role-playing group with Drac and Lessa and the other damsels on Sundays from 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern called Fan Service, which I'm theoretically role-playing. I don't know. I'm going to try to stream that one too. I don't know how that's going to work as much with streaming and the role-playing. I'm kind of scared, but you can also watch me there on Twitch.
I'm looking forward to that. That should be an entertaining. Have you guys published any of those yet?
We haven't recorded we did one session, but we didn't record any of it.
Okay.
And then we skipped last week, and I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to stay in character the whole time, like while I'm talking. I don't think I can do that though, because of the nature of my character being a dude. So I don't know how that's going to work.
I'm sure you figure it out. In the meantime, thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for my guests here today and for debating gnomes with us today. And we're looking forward to getting gnomes in the game. And thanks to the other contributors for DDOcast. It's a great group of folks that are helping me put this show together. Thanks to Turbine and Wizards for making great DDO games. And thanks to Cyberbears for hosting the podcast. You can hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, our calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be part of the show, if you have a comment on this episode, a question you'd like to hear us answer, or a topic you'd like to hear us debate, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment, or you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for latest cast updates. The closing tip for the week comes from Minion of Groomsh on Sarlona. He says, every character gets a free lesser feat exchange. You can use this to build I think he's saying free lesser reincarnation, which is the free heart. You can use this to build a character good at lower levels and reincarnate the build you had in mind when you have the levels and action points to support it, or as a do-over button to take chances and get messy and make mistakes with. You do also get a free feat exchange.
Or just be like me and have a collection of all the hearts they've handed out.
Yeah, I didn't use a lot of them either. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chests level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to try out gnomes when they hit Lamania.
Bye!